This is Leah. In February 2020, I began my internship extension into the spring semester with Sister Celine of Medical Mission Sisters, also known as MMS. I continued with already assigned responsibilities as well as started on several new projects. February 10th to the 19th marked the 58th session of the Commission on Social Development, also known as CSOC-D. This year's theme was affordable housing and social protection systems for all to address homelessness. In the past, MMS has written and delivered an oral statement at every session, and for this year, Sister Celine passed the baton on to me. We discussed, and I got to work with determination, highlighting one of the many facets of this year's theme, which is student homelessness. I laid down the premise as such. Many children and young adults, like myself, are striving to obtain an education because we understand its direct impact in our future ability to financially support ourselves and our loved ones, as well as to contribute to society in a positive manner. And we also intrinsically love to learn. Next, I argued that the lack of adequate, safe, and affordable housing stands as a hindrance to our aspirations, with supporting evidence from a study published in the New York Times and a few recommendations for the member states. I highlighted a few concepts. There is no particular face to homelessness, and many hide it well. Access to affordable housing and social protection for all is a basic human right, and I will link my full statement down below. Needless to say, I was super excited for the member states to hear our message. However, we did not get to deliver our statement. So here's the process. Our statement was approved by the UN, but it was not guaranteed that we get to speak because it would depend on how the general discussion proceeds. We were not given a specific time or date to be present. Essentially, we'd have to be constantly on standby, physically and mentally, to ensure that the statement is delivered. To be clear, I'm not blaming anybody. I'm merely disappointed in the situation. Myself, I had classes to attend, homework to do, and errands to complete. Sister Celine was away for the month of February for a training workshop, and my fellow intern did not feel well enough to step in. When I was sitting in conference room 4, waiting on standby, I noticed that only the member states were speaking, each with 7 minutes, compared to 3 minutes allotted for non-governmental organizations, also known as NGOs. It should be noted that I made sure to stay in contact with the NGO liaison from the UN and also with other members of the UN Secretariat, making sure that they knew I was there and ready to speak. For 3 hours straight, it was only the member states who spoke, and after their statements, they would leave. The number of people in the room kept decreasing, and the 3-hour period only ended because of a lunch break. If we did get to deliver our statement, it would have been to an empty room, and that's not a conversation. As my own personal opinion, this process is very disrespectful towards civil society. I do consider my time to be very precious, and I felt like my time was wasted. Of course, I also consider other people's time to be precious, like those of the member states and the UN secretariats, for example. I would even understand prioritizing the statements of the member states over those of the NGOs. But I truly believe that this process can be improved so that there's a better exchange of words, ideas, and emotions. Much too often, I feel like civil society is speaking to itself and not to the member states. For example, my fellow intern and I collectively attended 12 side events at CSOC-D 58, and there is usually only one member state representation per side event. More member states' participation would dramatically contribute to a fruitful conversation, as these side events are intended for deeper discussion on specific facets of the theme, like mental health and homelessness, or migration and homelessness. Sometimes I get the impression that everyone at the side event already agree with each other, which is great. But then, why is that issue not yet resolved? I believe it's partially due to the lack of participation from lawmakers, the private sector, youth, artists, people with lived experiences, researchers, and many others. Of course, I do acknowledge the nuances and limitations of side events, but I do think there is still room for improvement here. Speaking of lived experiences, I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to have participated as a panelist for one of the side events called Youth Homelessness, Interrogating Policy Gaps and legislative vacuum. I was joined by another young woman, and we both shared in our time in the foster care system, as well as our experiences with homelessness. I also appreciate the insights and incredible work that other expert panelists are doing all around the world, from Slovenia to India to Malta to New York. We discussed how helpful aftercare services would be for those who age out of the foster care system, because turning 18 is an arbitrary method of marking the transition into adulthood. I'll also link my full statement down below. Along with other interns, I researched and presented on the various avenues of youth engagement with the UN system to an audience of civil society. Sister Celine and I discussed on possible new projects, but our time meeting in person was cut short due to the rapid spread of COVID-19 in the US, especially in New York City. A few more insights that I've gained at this internship are as followed. 1, you can easily get lost at the UN, trying to tackle so many different things at once. Hi, do you care about climate change? Do you care about clean water and sanitation? What about quality education? What about zero hunger? And do you care about good health and well-being? Two, the UN is an idealistic concept, and realistically, the difference is somewhat jarring. Despite feeling disheartened at times, I still believe in the goodness of the UN as a global structure upholding human rights and peace. I support multilateralism and genuine dialogue. To conclude, I am very happy with my time interning here. I've learned a lot about the UN system, as well as about myself and my future career. I am also calling for a UN reform so that we can achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030 and fully carry out the responsibilities as mandated by the UN Charter. Thank you for watching.